Hello and welcome to ThePrint softcover online platform for the launch of select non-fiction books. And today I'm very happy to actually go ahead and release this particular book because it's been written by one of three of India's finest, and is also a subject which I am personally interested in. It was a lovely book to read, went through it, short book, but a book with a lot of depth. Well, the book that I'm talking about is In Hard Times, Security in Time of Insecurity. It's been edited by, Manoj Joshi, who's a distinguished fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. And of course, by Praveen Swami, who is my colleague. He's the national security editor here at ThePrint, and by Nishtha Gautam, who is the opinions editor at the Quint. Both of the three of them have come together along with Bloomsbury publications to come out with this book. So welcome to ThePrint, three of you.
Thank you.
So before we go ahead, I have a wrap book here, and I'll just unwrap it for the viewers to actually get a glimpse of how this book looks, and then we'll go ahead and discuss what really this book is all about. There you go. This is it, In Hard Times, Security in a Time of Insecurity, by Manoj, edited by Manoj Joshi, Praveen Swami, and Nishtha Gautam, a Bloomsbury publication. So my first question to you, Mr. Joshi, why this book? And you said the idea of this book came in 2020 during the COVID pandemic. So why this book? And what's so special about this book?
Well, the thing is that when COVID came, it upset the world we knew, meaning nothing else had so dramatically overturned everything, and one of the issues that was salient at that time was the issue of security. And the three of us, you often interacted, meaning in the sense, I write for the Quint. Praveen's a very old colleague. We exchange views on a variety of subjects. And I think Nishtha took the initiative and said, why don't we, come out with a more structured kind of a response to this. And we started thinking about this book. And as the title suggests, security in a time of insecurity, in the sense when all, kind of assumptions have gone for a 6, when the whole, in a sense, as you remember, when COVID hit, the very notion of a globalized world collapsed, meaning countries put up their barriers, they wouldn't give vaccines, they wouldn't give medicines, they wouldn't give anything. So this whole notion that what kind of a world we are began to be questioned. And so therefore, when you look at issue of security also, meaning hard security, because this book is about hard security, we've got number of, we have Admiral Arun Prakash, we have a number of Air Force officers writing in, and an Army officer writing on this. So Pranay from the Takshila Institution has written a very good essay on budgeting in defense. So many of these issues were kind of resounding. And so we decided that we'd do something more structured. And Nishtha is the one who took the initiative, contacted people, and we finally got into the process of writing this, though, as I'm sure she will explain, that it was not an easy task.
Exactly, and that's what I was going to come at. Thank you, Nishtha, for getting this book organized and bringing everybody together. And, so viewers, this book has a number of essays by eminent people who are, the final word when it comes to their particular domain. For example, you have Admiral Arun Prakash, the former Navy chief, talking about India's neglected maritime domain, a missed opportunity. You also have Lieutenant General D.S. Hooda, the former Northern Army commander, one of the finest generals in the Indian Army. who writes about the Army's capability development. And of course, you have Air Force officers, actually two of them, to talk about the air power. And we also have a former journalist and the advisor to the former PM Sanjay Baru writing about India's world. So Nishtha, how easy or difficult was it to bring all these authors together and then
Well,
to put it?
yeah. Thank you, Snehesh. And I really wish Manoj hadn't said that because it just puts me in a very tight spot. But before I answer your question, I just have to add to what Manoj said about the inception of the book. This book was actually in our minds for the past 5 years, in a different way. Manoj perhaps was thinking about something similar, and Manoj and I were colleagues at ORF. Before I joined ThePrint, I was also a fellow at Observer Research Foundation, and so this book was there, but it did not have the current shape. Right, and Praveen had been talking about it. I had been thinking about it. How does one sort of provide, or at least make a modest attempt to provide certain solutions to the challenges that India's security apparatus faces. And when COVID struck the world, it just catalyzed the process. So this book has actually been in the making for the past 5 years and not 2. So now you can now understand how difficult it was to actually put it together and give it the shape that it is in right now. So yes, reaching out to people and convincing them to be a part of this project was, I think, the easiest part. Because people just got excited, and I'm very grateful that veterans like Admiral Arun Prakash and General D.S. Huda and
Air Vice Marshal
Manmohan Bahadur, they were very generous with their support for the project, and they just turned in their essays at almost record speed.
Wow.
Which is, yes, such was the degree of enthusiasm. And also, I mean, I took it as a vote of confidence in the project, because everybody who was thinking about India's security and strategy was kind of concerned about the way forward. So everybody had certain ideas in their head, and it was just a matter of putting them all together. But the process of putting them all together was quite daunting, and I won't be modest about it at all. It was quite daunting, from chasing the right publisher, because we wanted to give it an appropriate home so that it kind of gets the attention that it deserves, because security is on top of everybody's mind. Even the layperson out on the streets, if you ask them ki bhai border pe kya chal raha hai, people would have, even a regular redi wala who sells chole kulche at Delhi University would have a word or two to share about the security situation that India has. Okay, we have 2 hostile neighbors and all that, whatever their understanding is. So we just wanted this book to have a shape and color that resonates with even a lay reader. This book was not intended just for experts.
I get that, and that's very important, because reaching out to the layman is very important. The book, when it starts off and it mentions, Praveen, something which says India needs a national security strategy for hard times, a strategy that embraces the battle pig, as it were, rather than the battle elephant. Now, the book starts off with this joint chapter introduction by both Manoj, Joshi, and you, Praveen. And it starts off with this pig analogy. And, for our viewers, tell us, what do you mean by the age of the battle pig?
So it's, I think, one of the favorite stories Manoj and I bounce back and forth. And it dates back to a battle in Hellenic Greece in the classical era, where the elephants of the Persian emperor, these were the most feared, weapons of war of that time, battle elephants with all their armor and their, enormous size. And it surrounded a city. And the city residents really didn't know how to fight back. What do you fight back against an elephant with? And, you have to think thousands of years ago to imagine how terrifying that must have seemed. And all they had in the city was not even horses. They had some stray pigs, which were presumably meant for, roast pork over the weekend and didn't seem very good for anything else. But then somebody had a really brilliant idea, which is that they coated the pigs in oil and set them on fire and pushed them out towards the elephants. And these poor elephants saw all these burning, squealing pigs running at them at high speed, panicked and ran away, trampling over the army. And it was to us a distilled example of how smart thinking and creativity can defeat a much richer, bigger adversary. And this runs, I think, in various ways and forms through the whole book in various people's chapters. I mean, so we talk a lot about, how COVID had an economic impact and so on and so forth. But I think one of the things we kind of lost in the debate in India, see, for 20 years, 30 years, we more or less thought we'll grow at 7, 8, 9%. We'll be a big economy. We'll be able to modernize our forces by throwing money at them. But after COVID, that doesn't look such a realistic thing. The world doesn't look the same. Everything from supply chains to this, economic growth are in trouble. And the intentions of our enemies have become more dubious. So one of the theories around what China is doing on the line of control is that, now that its own economy is spluttering and its demographic is changing, maybe it wants to settle unfinished business on its borders quickly before it won't be able to anymore. Maybe the big Western powers who imposed order across the planet won't be able to do so quite so, in quite such a sweeping way in years to come. And we asked all the authors to apply themselves to this single question: if you don't have cash, or at least as much cash as you used to, how can you defend and secure India? What are the new creative kinds of things that you can bring your minds to? And I think it's fair to say, Manoj will probably have some thoughts on this too, that, we didn't try and stuff everyone's thinking in one box or pitch a line. Many of our authors have very different views about how to address this problem. But I think there's an interesting bunch of ideas there that can be developed and thought about both by ordinary readers and by people in the strategic community.
Absolutely. And this book and this particular story mentions, the thing is that in war, it's often the smarter and not the stronger side that eventually wins the war. So, Mr. Joshi, do you think India is trying to be smarter, or is India trying to be stronger? Now, especially given the context of what's happening in Russia, Ukraine, what happened between Azerbaijan and Armenia, where there was a lot of fusion of new technology that could clearly outbeat the giant elephants of the past. I'm talking about tanks, I'm talking about fighters, fighter aircraft, and things like that. So in your assessment, sir, since you've seen this and you've covered this over the decades, do you see India has been smarter, or India is trying to become stronger? Or is it a combination of both?
I think that the problem is that India's entire defense system is extremely bureaucratic. So, trying to be smarter there is not easy when you're in a bureaucratic kind of a framework. And as essays in the book suggest, that the current, for the last 6 years, there has been a relative decline in the Indian defense budget. And before that, I was in the Naresh Chandra committee, and when we asked the three services about their modernization plans. At that time, this is 2011, 2012, it was clear that our modernization was something like a decade and a half behind schedule. And decade and a half, I'm being modest, probably 2 decades.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking in my mind too.
So behind schedule. And there is a point beyond which you can't do without money, meaning being smart is one thing. But, the point is you also, we are in the age of high technology. Now, this is the interesting thing that this book came out, or the major work of the book was done by the time the Ukraine war began.
Yeah.
Okay. And the Ukraine war has given us those lessons about being smarter. Okay. One of the very obvious things is how the Ukrainians have used drones for battle space management, how they had integrated their entire system, their entire network, communication network, so that any guy, I'm saying, with the soldier in the front with a maybe a mobile or a laptop can communicate information and get. So the battle space 2,000 meters, or I would say 4,000 meters on either side of the front, has now become extremely lethal.
Yeah,
it's become extremely lethal. Yes, you still require heavy artillery and that kind of stuff, but as the Ukrainian experience is showing, more precise artillery has made a huge difference. Precision, long-range fire is making a huge difference. So the thing is that some of these things have become manifest, and then comes the other problem that we suddenly hit us between the eyes, which was this Agnipath, which we have referred to, meaning our writers have referred to it, but because again, this only came out recently. Now, the point is, what the Ukraine and these trends indicate, you need more and more skills in the as a soldier. You need to be very, very high skilled. Otherwise, you become cannon fodder. Now, the point is, when you are recruiting people for 4 years, out of which roughly 8 months go on annual leave, and assuming 1.5 months go for 1.5 years go for basic training, where is the time to train that person to a highly skilled operator of, let's say, a radar, a communication system, a sophisticated artillery piece or a system, So there are question marks, meaning in the end, what I find is that because history is a kind of a moving thing, the Ukrainian war has actually raised more question marks before us. And that very obviously deserves another book, but that's a separate issue.
Well, that's true. Looking forward to that book. Nishtha, Sanjay Baru, in his thing, he writes that the Henry Kissinger referred to India as a potential major power of the 21st century, and this was way back in 1994. And he also notes that the 1990s were a turning point for India, and we all agree with the fact. But now, looking at here in 2022, do you think that India has emerged as a major power of the 21st century, or is it still in the potential stage only? And how potential?
I think, Snehesh, it's like a mixed bag, right? So we have certainly made big strides, right? And we've been able to combat some of our challenges, but those challenges, I have to say, shouldn't have been there to begin with. The abject poverty that India has seen and still sees, the food issue, the hunger that we still see, right? And all of these issues are actually necessary when we think of a comprehensive strategic doctrine for India. Because, the primary question is that how much budget would you want to allocate for the security of the country when a large number of people are actually dying of hunger? What is your priority? So every time there is, so as Manoj rightly pointed out, that for the past 6 years, there has been a consistent budget cut when it comes to defense, right? Yet there is always this criticism that we are spending a bit too much on security, on, say, our space program, where our health, our education, and our other social indices are much worse than much smaller and poorer countries, Right. So when it comes to the post-liberalization India, we have made immense strides, but we are still not there. And we have had a string of missed opportunities. Decisions that we did not make, decisions that we kind of sat on and did not make in time. I think that's very important. Now, what Sanjay here has tried to say that, okay, 90s, okay, Kissinger, very few people take Kissinger seriously. But yes, this was an interesting observation that yes, India's time is here, but we kind of delayed that time by at least 3 decades. We are still not quite there.
True. And you mentioned a very important point about how much do we really allocate to the defense. There is poverty, there is hunger, a lot of other things, social issues. And this is what Pranay touches upon in his chapter, which is neither guns no butter: the inconvenient truth of India's defense financing. And as Mr. Joshi rightly mentioned, when you talk about defense budget, while the defense budget might really sound like a huge number, for an average reader viewer, the fact is that the capital budget of the entire lot is minuscule in comparison to, let's say, the pensions. So the government has brought in this Agniveer scheme. And one of the main reasons, even though the government won't say it, is one of the main reasons behind this move is to eventually cut down pensions in the long run. So both Praveen and Mr. Joshi, how does this really work? So what do we spend on? So is that debate of security and food will always be there. So how do we go about with it? Guns or butter?
Manoj, would you like a first stab at that, or shall I go?
Well, I'll only say one thing, that Pranay himself, in the afterword of his chapter, has pointed out that the Agnipath scheme will only start delivering economic results from the mid-30s.
Yeah.
So please note that. Yeah, Praveen, why don't you say something?
No, I just wanted to add that, sometimes, especially when we talk about fighting smart, it isn't just about soldiers either. And I think a couple of essays in the book talk about this. It becomes necessarily enmeshed with the state of your universities, with your research investments, with the quality of pure sciences research you are able to do at your universities. And these are things with a bunch of other economic sort of knock-ons. And in these 30 years of opportunity, if you like, we haven't done a great job of developing that backbone of technological excellence. You find Indians, ironically, at many of the cutting-edge technology firms in the defense sector overseas, but not very much here. And it's not just, again, the military, the way we fight our counterinsurgencies, the way our police services are run. Now, these are things that are all very important because they ensure foundational security. No foreign investor will come and set up a factory if they think there are going to be riots or civil disturbances in their area. So you need competent forces. We haven't made very many of those investments, partly because we always thought, oh, we've got a lot of people. So we have a lot of soldiers to fight, or we have enough people to deal with these things. And what we have to realize in these hard times is that this medieval approach to dealing with problems will not deliver. Now, I don't think any of us would think that, oh, the answer is to spend billions and trillions of dollars and then our problems will be solved. But definitely we have to think a lot more carefully about what our priority problems are and think about all of government solutions to best equipping and moving them forward. And hopefully this book is just the beginning of a debate on how we might be able to do some of these things better. Because honestly, at least to my mind, I don't know if Manoj and Nishtha would agree, but to my mind, the real problem is for the last 30 years, we have not really had this discussion at all in any kind of serious way. It's, oh, buy this or buy that, or let's get something this. But in terms of institutional reform, in terms of creating depth for our research capabilities, in terms of building an ecosystem of creative vendors and companies, talk a lot about this stuff, but we've not really done very much about it.
And Mr. Joshi, when it comes to defense security, we have two hostile neighbors. We live in a region which which has three nuclear powers, including us. China is, and then the fact is that amidst all this, we still don't have a national security strategy paper, or let's say national security doctrine. When this government took over, they mentioned about working on this. I have done stories on the fact that the team has been constituted and they're working on it, but then suddenly everything has just evaporated. So do you think that while we talk about it, do we need a proper structure, a doctrine in place? Have we really focused on that? Or are we just reacting to situations? China has come in, so we need to do this. Something is happening in Ukraine, Ukraine has done this, we need to replicate that. Are we really thinking on our own? And is there a need for a national security strategy or a doctrine, sir?
Well, all these things start from the bottom, okay? When I began my career as a journalist for elections, I traveled to UP, Bihar, etc. Earlier, I think Bihar was sui generis. Now I realize that UP has become Bihar. The point I'm trying to make is there is a breakdown that instead of improving, instead of the role of the police administration becoming sharper, more efficient, etc., is it degenerating? It has degenerated, at least I know that in the south, it's pretty good, but I think in the north, large parts of the north, university system, you tell me a university between Delhi and Kolkata, which is functional, which can produce anything, meaning BHU in some departments, okay. That's it. But this is a huge region. So what I'm saying is that there is a sense of a breakdown or things are kind of decaying. Now, my point is, upon this structure, how do you create a smart defense ministry, a smart Ministry of Home Affairs, a smart intelligence bureau? People are working as they used to always work. So we have not seen smarter solutions coming in. And the Praveen, in his chapter, he has written about the counterinsurgency.
Yeah.
And he stated something very obvious. That is that no counterinsurgency strategy that relies on force alone gets anywhere. This is something the world over, meaning that you need a mix of politics and political action and force to deal with the situation. And you need to reduce force more and more, and then allow, and that is what is happening in Kashmir up to a point. You see, that was what was happening, but then again, things have gone haywire. So my point here is that as a national system, so in the sense, the reason why you don't have a national security strategy, now we've been speaking about it since the 2000s. I was in the National Security Advisory Board, Strategic Defense Review, etc., etc. Then most recently, the Defense Policy Group was set up. They were supposed to write the national security strategy, you see. But all this, leave aside all the national security strategy, there's one common sense thing. You constantly hear the defense forces saying that we have to fight a two-front war or 2.5 front war.
2.5. Yeah.
Okay. But that's insane. Meaning that the point is no country can fight a 2.5 front war. And so, meaning you have World War II as a classic example. If you're Germany or Japan. So the biggest challenge for us was a diplomatic challenge. That is, how do we prevent China and Pakistan from becoming better and better allies? Have we even attempted to tackle it? Is there any evidence that anyone, I think barring probably Dr. Manmohan Singh, I see no evidence that anyone attempted to seriously deal with this issue. Because you're asking two other nuclear powers who are your adversary and say you're ready to fight them. That's idiotic. So I'm saying that that's the least smart strategy. Let me put it the other way. A smart strategy would be to somehow buy time with one and to deal with the other.
Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. And as you mentioned, before the military solutions comes a number of steps, and India really needs to focus on that: the diplomatic, the economic, the political, and the military solution is only towards the end. Nishtha, you've written a wonderful chapter, and beyond equal opportunities, women in the armed forces. Now, you in your argument, you said that the argument for a more gender-balanced military should not be approached merely through the prism of equal opportunity. Though equality remains the centerpiece of our national aspirations, and you also deride the fact that military is more masculine, seen as more masculine in nature. Now, of course, the armed forces have now opened up various roles to the women. Now you have women combat fighters. Now you have women on board ships as well. But when it comes to the army per se, the so-called last masculine state, the fact is that it's still not open to combat of women in combat roles, combat in actual war fighting, in actual physical war fighting space. Other spaces have been opened up. But do you think before actually women get into the actual combat per se in the army, there needs to be a bit of a societal change in how we think and how we process things? Is that necessary?
Absolutely not, Snehesh. Absolutely not, because then it will never happen. Right, because even in militaries of countries like the US or Israel, and these are some of the examples that we throw when we want to make an argument for more women in the armed forces. The cases of say sexual harassment or women not allowed to break the glass ceiling, there is always a glass ceiling for women, and there would be one or two symbolic gestures that are made to show that yes, there is a prevailing equanimity with gender issues and everything in those developed militaries. But I think this idea that first the mindsets have to change and then the policy has to work, it doesn't work like that. It has to be, this is one of those cases where it has to be a top-down approach. You make the policy first and then mindsets would follow. And if they don't follow, to hell with it. And I make no excuses for the regressive mindsets that certain, a majority, I would say, majority of India's population still holds very dear. We have to make no excuses. We have to make no concessions for that. Now, I'll just take a minute to explain how it works and how it is a smarter choice to make. And I say, okay, equal opportunity and everything, it is enshrined in our constitution, and we have to strive every single day to achieve that. But when it comes to making our military smarter, just look at Ukraine, right? It is not just the soldiers that are fighting. And Manoj just said that it is not just the soldiers. And Praveen said that everything has to come together, right? Why aren't we recruiting more women for our, if you look at stats, and I've quoted some, that when it comes to engineering and technology and softer engineering trades like electronics and communications, computer science, and all those things, it is more women than men that are graduating out of our engineering institutes, right? If you take if you compare it to the hard sort of engineering trades like mechanical or electrical and stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So why aren't we tapping into that resource? You have to make a conscious effort how to make your military smarter by being more inclusive. And by being more inclusive means get more women in, get more skill sets in. And if those skill sets are found in, say, women graduates of engineering colleges, why not do that? So the first principle has to be get your skills from wherever possible, because we cannot work without that. Secondly, when you get more women in, and I've made a sociological argument there, that it is there has been no study conducted anywhere in the world that suggests that military men and military women, they prefer marrying each other. But in most trades, this is happening. Doctors marry each other, lawyers marry each other. And anecdotal evidence suggests that even in the military, this happens. You bring down your certain overhead costs, like the education for children bill, or the HRA, because you give them one house, right? That's our policy. That's the policy of Indian government. So, you have to think about those issues when you look for smart solutions. Equality, yes, that is our prime focus.
Perfect. I'm coming towards the end because the time is running short, but this is Praveen, goes straight to you. And on, Praveen, you're someone who's covered the Indian security establishment for long, the police, the agencies for long. And the former Home Secretary and, of course, Jammu and Kashmir Governor N.N. Vora, and he had suggested setting up a National Security Administrative Service, which would be a cadre of dedicated and well-trained officer from all the services. And also at the same time, there is also a lack of accountability that is there when it comes to failures. Now, of course, the intelligence agencies would always say, we can't talk about our successes because it's all top secret. You guys only talk about failures. So, but there were multiple big failures that happened. For example, the Mumbai terror attack was a huge failure. Of course, there was a political fallout that happened after the Mumbai terror attack. But as far as the security and the intelligence establishment is concerned, things just went along. Nobody was really taken to task. So how do you see this? And is there a reform that is needed when it comes to India's intelligence agencies? And there are multiple of them right now. NTRO, DIA, IB, RNAW. So is there a reform that is needed? And also, how much is police reforms really important?
Yeah, and I think, Snehesh, as you said, all of this tracks back to the same thing. Mr. Vora's idea for a national security service was, definitely a step that could have gone in the right direction. But in my view, the problem is none of these sort of tinkering with the administrative services system go far enough. We have to be the only country in the world where our intelligence services are overwhelmingly dominated by police service officers who go in and out of the intelligence services and may not even know the languages of the areas they are supposed to be, spying on. We have to be the only country in the world where everybody in the police and intelligence services will get an annual report almost, and in the military, which is outstanding, where everyone is brilliant and fantastic and, at the top of their game. And the even more serious problem, I think, is almost all of the services, including the military, are very closed off to outside expertise. So as many of our viewers who are in the tech field will know, hiring somebody into these services in certain kinds of specialized tech roles makes no sense, because 5 years from now, the technology will have changed so much that these skills you've brought in are useless. You need to be much more flexible. Abroad, universities are things that the armed services, the intelligence services work very closely with for expertise and analysis. Yeah. That's not the case here. Very often when the military draws up, requirements, it doesn't have the in-house expertise even to know whether those requirements are scientifically sustainable, whether they are the cutting edge of the technology, whether in the world of science and technology, things are happening that are revolutionary. So, across the board, from the army to the air force to the intelligence services, I think this institutional structure the British left us with is just time for it to go away and die. And we have to really think again from first steps on how a modern system ought to operate. Unfortunately, this, many politicians, many bureaucrats like Mr. Vora have said this over the years, but it runs into a lot of resistance from vested interests who wouldn't want a system where you are guaranteed employment irrespective of competence for 40 years of your life. That's fantastic for everybody concerned. But we just can't keep on functioning in this way and hope to be somewhere. The whole world has changed how it functions. And you're right, this is the elephant in the room. And this is the one thing that has to be sorted out. You can't have decisions on defense procurement ultimately being made by bureaucrats who may not know the difference between a battleship and a cruiser till the week before they took their job. I mean, that's just not an efficient and effective way of functioning.
Well, there you go. Thank you so much, the three of you, for this discussion. And I'll again quote from the book and the para that I read earlier. India needs a national security strategy for hard times, a strategy that embraces the battle pig, as it were, rather than the battle elephant. So viewers, this is the book, In Hard Times, Security in the Time of Insecurity, edited by Manoj, Joshi, Praveen, Swami, and Nishtha Gautam, Bloomsbury Publications. Do get a copy, do get your hands on this particular book, because it brings together multiple brilliant minds on one particular topic, that is security in times of insecurity. Thank you so much for joining us at ThePrint.
Thank you, Snehesh.
Thank you.